What if a single conflict could push the entire Middle East into a wider war, disrupt global oil supplies, and drag some of the world's most powerful countries into direct confrontation? Right now, tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States are reaching levels that many analysts say are among the most dangerous in years. Missile strikes, military retaliation, warnings of further attacks, and growing fears about global energy supplies have created an atmosphere of uncertainty across the region. Around the world, governments, financial markets, and military analysts are closely watching the situation. But what exactly started this conflict? Why are these countries confronting each other now? And could this crisis grow into something even bigger? To understand what is happening today, we need to go back several decades. The roots of the hostility between Iran and Israel can be traced back to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Before the revolution, Iran and Israel actually maintained relatively normal relations. But after the revolution, Iran's new leadership adopted a very different political and ideological stance. Iran's government began opposing Israel and declared strong support for Palestinian groups that oppose Israeli policies. Since then, the relationship between the two countries has been defined by deep mistrust and hostility. Over time, this rivalry expanded beyond political disagreements and became a strategic confrontation. Israel views Iran as one of its most serious security threats, largely because of Iran's growing military capabilities and its nuclear program. Israeli leaders have repeatedly warned that if Iran were to develop nuclear weapons, it could fundamentally change the balance of power in the Middle East. Iran has consistently said that its nuclear program is intended for peaceful purposes, such as energy production and scientific research. However, several Western governments and international observers have expressed concerns that Iran could eventually develop the ability to produce nuclear weapons. Because of these fears, Israel has taken various actions aimed at slowing or stopping Iran's nuclear development. Over the past 2 decades, reports have emerged of cyber operations, sabotage, and covert activities targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Some of the most famous incidents included cyber attacks on nuclear facilities and mysterious explosions at military sites. Iran has frequently blamed Israel for these incidents, although direct responsibility is often difficult to confirm publicly. These covert confrontations created what analysts often call a shadow war between the two countries. Instead of open warfare, the conflict was fought through intelligence operations, cyber attacks, and actions carried out indirectly through allied groups in other countries. For example, tensions between Iran and Israel have played out in places such as Syria, where Israeli airstrikes have targeted facilities believed to be linked to Iranian forces. While these confrontations were serious, they generally remained limited and carefully controlled in order to avoid a full-scale war. However, the current situation appears to be more dangerous because several powerful countries are involved. The United States plays a central role in this dynamic. For decades, the United States has been one of Israel's strongest allies, providing military support, intelligence cooperation, and advanced defense technology. At the same time, relations between the United States and Iran have been extremely tense since the events of 1979. One of the most dramatic moments in that history was the seizure of the United States Embassy in Tehran during the revolution. American diplomats were held hostage for more than a year, an event that deeply damaged U.S. relations. Since that time, tensions have continued through economic sanctions, political disputes, and occasional military incidents in the Persian Gulf. The United States has imposed multiple rounds of sanctions on Iran, targeting its economy, energy sector, and financial system. These sanctions were designed to pressure Iran over concerns about its nuclear activities and its support for armed groups in the region. Iran, in turn, has accused the United States of trying to weaken its economy and limit its influence in the Middle East. Because of this long history of rivalry, Conflicts involving Iran and Israel often draw the United States into the situation. The latest escalation appears to have been triggered by a series of military strikes targeting Iranian facilities. According to reports, these strikes were intended to damage military infrastructure and reduce Iran's ability to expand its strategic capabilities. Israeli officials have argued that such actions are necessary to protect their national security and prevent the emergence of new threats. Iran responded strongly to these developments. Missile and drone attacks were launched toward Israeli targets, and Iranian leaders warned that further strikes could trigger wider retaliation. These developments immediately raised alarms across the region. Military forces increased their readiness levels. Air defense systems were activated. Naval units were deployed to strategic locations, and intelligence agencies began closely monitoring movements across land, sea, and air. Another major concern quickly emerged: the security of global shipping routes. One of the most critical of these routes is the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf with the Arabian Sea and serves as one of the most important oil transportation routes in the world. Every day, massive oil tankers pass through this narrow passage, carrying energy supplies from countries in the Gulf to markets in Asia, Europe, and beyond. Estimates suggest that roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply travels through this single corridor. Because the passage is relatively narrow, it represents a strategic choke point. If shipping were disrupted, the effects on global energy markets could be immediate and dramatic. Iran has previously warned that it could restrict or disrupt traffic through this route if it faces severe military pressure. Even the possibility of such disruption can send shockwaves through financial markets. Oil traders are extremely sensitive to geopolitical instability in major producing regions. When tensions rise, investors often fear that supplies could be interrupted. Those fears alone can push oil prices higher. Higher oil prices can affect many aspects of the global economy. Transportation costs increase, fuel prices rise, and businesses face higher expenses. For countries that rely heavily on imported oil, this can create serious economic pressure. But beyond economics, the greatest concern is the possibility that the conflict could expand. The Middle East has a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and armed groups. If direct confrontation between Iran and Israel intensifies, other actors could become involved. For now, the world is watching closely to see what happens next. The outcome could shape the future of the Middle East and influence global energy markets and international security for years to come. If you found this explanation helpful, consider subscribing for more breakdowns of global events and geopolitics.
Ordered the evacuation of almost all of southern Beirut.